So we'd either got to go left or go right, and all it needed was an answer to go left or right.
But Clemenson and his fellow officers didn't get their answers. Due to some peculiarity of the land at Arnhem, the radios the airborne men had brought with them didn't work very well. Company commanders couldn't speak to their COs, who in turn couldn't reach the senior commanders. With his troops split up, in contact with the enemy, and with faulty radios, no one knew what was happening. Urquhart was in a very difficult position. Luckily for him, one of his battalions found a way round the German line. Led by Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, they targeted a road running along the river into the town. It was almost unguarded. They could soon see the outline of the railway bridge. But as they approached, the Germans blew it up. Undaunted, the soldiers pressed on towards the town, hoping to reach the other bridge, the road bridge, before the Germans could close the gap. At about 8 p.m, after only 5 hours of marching and fighting, Lieutenant Colonel John Frost's paras reached the road bridge. It was the divisional objective, and they'd got it. Today, none of the buildings which surrounded the bridge in those days survive. In 1944, buildings crowded close to the bridge and dominated the approach. In these houses, Frost's men worked up defensive positions.
You first, of course, the first thing to do is to knock all the glass out of the windows and break up any furniture you require to give yourself protection from your firing position.
That evening, Tony Hibbert managed to contact his brigadier. He urged him to send more troops down the river road to the bridge.
And he replied that he wouldn't, that they were engaged, fully engaged, and that they would rest for the night. Of course, they'd only been fighting for about 5 hours, and that's not the moment to start resting. It was a very, very unwise decision, in my view.
About 700 men were holding the north end of the bridge as night fell on the first day of Market Garden. They waited for their comrades to join them in the morning. About 60 miles away, Horrocks's tanks were bedding down for the night, already well behind schedule. They had come only 7 miles from their start line. They stopped for the night here, in the town of Valkenswaard. They'd had a hard day. Their tanks needed refueling and were desperately vulnerable in the dark. But they were still 6 miles from Eindhoven, their first objective, and 10 from the American airborne forces with whom they were to link up.
We'd lost other tanks. We'd lost infantry. Nobody liked stopping. We knew, and we were very aware of the need to press on. We'd been given the rough timetable, even down to me, knew how important, vitally important it was to get up to the airborne.
The operation was behind schedule, and all the time the SS Panzer divisions, which had so worried the intelligence men, were reinforcing. Moving forward on the second day of the operation, Horrocks's tanks eventually reached the first of their airborne stepping stones, the bridge at Zon. Here, Americans of the 101st Division had captured both sides of the canal crossing. But they had to do more than hold the bridge for the operation to succeed. They had to hold the road up which Horrocks's thrust would push. The Germans were in force all around. The only ground the Allies actually held was the road itself. The American commander, General Maxwell Taylor, called it Indian fighting. remembering the US cavalry protecting wagon trains as they crossed the Old West. Throughout Operation Market Garden, the Germans were continually trying to cut the road. If they succeeded, the plan would fail. At the same time, the British in Arnhem were fighting to reach Frost's force at the bridge, but they ran into strong SS opposition. For the British General Urquhart, the position was extremely frustrating. He couldn't talk to his commanders in the town, so he grabbed a jeep and drove forward to find out what was happening. He found himself caught up in the thick of the fighting, around the hospital, over there.
As soon as we poked our nose out, we were shot at with machine guns. I just pulled back to decide what to do next when a great big chap turned up, whom I didn't know, and Gerald Lathbury. He said, well, this is General Urquhart. General Urquhart said, come on, Gerald, we'll go and have a look. And he set off straight across this road junction. All hell broke off on the left. It's when I realized how much room there is around bullets, because I was getting sprayed with bits of brick breaking away from the wall on my right and scattering maybe. And by some miracle, Gerald Lathbury was the only one that was hit. We got him into the first house, and a German with a machine gun appeared in the door. Roy Urquhart told me afterwards, he said, you know, I'm the only serving general who's shot a German soldier with a pistol in a battle. I said, you weren't the only one who did. We all shot him. He was riddled.
This is the house they were in. It was clearly too dangerous. So leaving the wounded Lathbury door, stepped over the dead German and raced off round the corner. A Dutch civilian let them in, but they could see that outside in the street in front was a German gun and its crew, shooting at British soldiers. They went upstairs into the attic. Urquhart and his companions found themselves cooped up here. They couldn't move until the German gun left the next day. Urquhart was eventually away from his headquarters, unable to influence the battle, for 36 hours. His absence meant that during this crucial period, the British airborne troops were almost leaderless. No one knew if he was alive, and coordination between units was seriously damaged. As the airborne general languished in his attic, the Guards began to push on at speed. With the Grenadiers in the lead, they covered 20 miles in just a few hours to link up with the American 82nd Division, which had captured the bridge at Grave on the first day.
Well, my name is Moffett Burris, and I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. And I was company commander of I Company 504 Parachute Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division. The operation just went right. It went as planned. As soon as we got within rifle and machine gun range of the bridge and fired, they started waving a white flag. I think it was one of them's undershirt, and they surrendered. And at that point, we felt real good, and we said, maybe we will be home by Christmas.
The British sped across the bridge towards Grosbeek, which dominated the town of Nijmegen. There were now just 2 bridges left between them and the German heartland. There was a good chance that Market Garden would work. The Guards' tanks were here. Horrocks was on his way up the column, and the Americans were already fighting in the streets of Nijmegen. To succeed, the British and Americans had to capture the bridge there, the last before the bridge at Arnhem, just 8 miles away. On the 4th day of the operation, General Horrocks arrived to join his tanks in Nijmegen. He made straight for the best viewpoint in town, the power station by the river.